Firstly, this video isn't sponsored. It'd be more surprising if it was. Back during the 2024 Game Awards, a lot of games came out, there was a lot of different trailers, but one that I really latched onto was Dispatch. And it was announced to release this year. And while it hasn't had any major updates since the announcement, there is still plenty of information for me to find out exactly what power sets each hero has, what kind of characteristics they may have. We can go off their costumes, their names, and we can go off of just the stats that show up in the game. I may or may not be super hyped for this game if it wasn't already clear. Now, there are plenty of characters for us to go over. We'll use the game's lineup here to get the order of what we're going to do it in. So firstly, the Sonar situation is kind of crazy right now.
You gonna eat those Twinks?
If you couldn't tell, the character's voiced by Moist Critical. So, first thing I want to point out about Sonar is that obviously he's got a bat head and he can shoot sonar blasts. It was depicted in the trailer, so we already know that. That's already nailed down. But one thing that I think is weird is that there's another bat that shows up throughout the trailer who's got a full bat body, and also his fur changes color and his eyes change color too in another scene. That could be a completely different character, but I think that it's still Sonar and that he's more like a werewolf bat. A werebat. So he would be able to go from just normal, plain old, well, as plain as you can get for a dude with a bat head, and then he has a big bat form, which is just, well, it's a big humanoid bat. Although that does imply that when he turns into his big bat form, that he's just flying around naked. Interestingly though, he doesn't seem to be affected by sunlight as far as we can tell, but I do have a theory, is that in that scene where he's belching out this giant sonar roar and is got the big red eyes and his fur's a little bit of a different color tone, I think that is kind of at nighttime, he's at risk of turning into a beast form. I can't tell if there's sunlight in that scene or if that's room light, but of course that's just a theory. Again. So what would make Sonar weak? We could use Man-Bat from Batman as a parallel. He usually has a weakness to hypersonic sounds as well as incredibly bright lights. But I think because Sonar makes hypersonic sounds consistently, he would be adjusted to it, especially with how big his ears are. So I'm iffy on if he would be weak to sonar sounds, but he probably is weak to light. It's just that he's adjusted to it. So say you put him in a really dark room, his bat sensors kick in, and then you hit him with multi-million volt flashlight. Other than that, he doesn't boast any kind of strength or super durability, so I imagine that any normal kind of weaponry would probably be lethal against him. Now, a man that I would unintentionally cosplay if I were to tie my hair back, Flambé. Assuming that the flaming man that we see at the start of the trailer fighting Mecha Man is Flambé, because I don't know how many superheroes have fire abilities, it would help us narrow down his power set. For one, it looks incredibly similar to the Human Torch. So he can probably do anything that the Human Torch is capable of doing, but I think that it's at a limit. The scene where he's fighting Mecha Man, he's in a full body flame up mode and he's flying right at him and everything. But usually when you see him outside of that, if that is him, it's just small flames in the hands, and that's about it. It's just a light show generally outside of that situation. And so he probably burns out easily, meaning he probably can't fire for long durations of time. But if it is him in that scene, I find it weird because there's this little snippet of Flambé absolutely eating it against the wall and probably losing a tooth, because you see him without a tooth later on. But then he can do this. I don't understand how he could get beaten by a concrete wall, but then slam a giant metallic robot thing through the sky. So I imagine if he's in his full body fire up mode that he's way stronger and way more durable, but outside of it he's just more of a dude. But of course his power is fire based, so if you dunk him in the ocean or put him in an airtight situation, he's probably, just a normal dude. Onto a character that has a pretty straightforward name and actually has a lot of the screen time in the trailer, Invisigal.
Washed up dad bod superhero with no superpowers. Can't wait.
Of course she can turn invisible, but her clothes also turn invisible alongside her. Now, assuming that they're not specialized pieces of clothing, I have to imagine that she can also make items disappear as well alongside of her. Another note is that she uses chains in one of the scenes. I'm not certain if that's a consistent weapon she uses, or if that was just a situational weapon. Like, oh, she found a pile of chains in the alleyway, so she might as well use them. She doesn't seem like much of a physical fighter, but I imagine someone who would carry around an asthma puffer wouldn't be much of one. This is another one of my theories, is that her character is depicted to be a smoker with her profile picture and everything. But then in the scene where she's walking out of the office, you can see in her left hand that she's got an asthma puffer, which disappears alongside with her. So I imagine that she can disappear items that aren't specifically made for her. It makes me think that this character is going to be weak, like physically, because they have some kind of lung condition from smoking. It makes sense because her invisibility is pretty overpowered as is. We don't know if she can hide from heat scanners or anything, but I imagine if you were to put paint or dust on her, the paint and dust would just also turn invisible alongside her, so you wouldn't be able to get through with that as a weakness. But if she's physically weak and not able to run around too much, then, you know, she would need to take a literal breather. Onto a character voiced by everyone's favorite Irish YouTuber, Punch Up. He's voiced by Jacksepticeye. He's a little bit confusing for me, because there's a few characters that don't have a full show of their power set throughout the actual trailer, but with a character named Punch Up and his arm is wrapped up in just general surgical wrapping, I think I can pretty much narrow down what he's about. I'm assuming he's like Iron Fist in a way, where he can specifically only hit something with a full powerful punch with his right hand. And also, his name's Punch Up, so, you know, he's a bit of a shorter character, so I imagine he's always punching literally up. But then you can also use the terminology that's used within comedians, is that they always punch up, which is always attacking or like criticizing someone who is either in a better or higher position than them. So I imagine that if it's based on that saying, then maybe his power scales based on who he's fighting. So let's say he's fighting a normal dude, he's probably got just a little bit above the strength of a normal dude. Or if he's fighting Mecha Man, he's got just above the strength of a giant mech suit. And a weakness for that power, just don't fight him, as in like physically. Maybe just try to tire him out until he can't utilize his power properly. And I would assume he's not made of titanium either, but when you do see him get put into this stat bar thing, his defense raises dramatically. So it makes me think that maybe not only is his fist, you know, strong, but maybe he has like some resilience in like his skin or something like that. Maybe he does have like titanium skin, except it's not actually titanium. But we can't take that as 100% proof, because one of the game mechanics is that you can level up the statistics for each of your characters. So for all we know, someone's just been buffing his defense stat up incredibly. Now we go on to Karlach. I mean Magic. I mean Malova. Malova? Malevola. Malevola. Malevola? I don't know how to pronounce her name. I need to hear it before I can say it. As you can somewhat tell, she's a bit of a demon lady with a big ass sword. She's kind of badass, I'm gonna be real. She's a bit confusing to me because I can't tell if her powers are from the sword or if she has powers herself, or both her and the sword separately have powers like Thor and Mjolnir. One thing you can already tell, that she can teleport around with the sword. I'm assuming it's with the sword because it's a giant slash mark in the wall. And one thing to note about the sword is that it's not actually really a sword. It, like, when you pause it and you look at it, it's a giant slab of stone, like a pillar of some sorts, that's just been attached to a hilt and handle. So she's swinging around a giant piece of stone. It's probably a magic stone. I wouldn't want to get hit by that. That sounds like it hurts. So she most definitely has superhuman strength, especially if she's lugging that thing around. And a magic stone sword that allows her to teleport, as well as it giving off some weird pink energy every time she hits stuff. I don't know if that's like specific or if it's just a neat little light show thing that the sword does whenever it hits stuff. That's the most I've got on her. Weaknesses? Probably people like Invisigal or a speedster. Someone who, again, can wear them down because they have to put a lot of energy into punching and swinging around a giant sword. Another way would be to separate her from her sword. You are still dealing with someone who could probably punch a hole through a wall by herself, but it's better than getting hit by that giant stone thing that's somehow capable of slicing like a regular sword, but is thick like a rock. Next one we have Golem. No, not that Golem, this Golem. We're going to assume that this character is built like an actual Golem. A Golem is a humanoid clay sculpture, which they would usually put a word of God onto a piece of paper, and they'll put it into the mouth of the Golem, and they'll be able to command the Golem because it would become sentient. In some other cases, they write it to say that the note that they write is like a list of commands, like go fetch me bread, and you would put it into the golem's mouth and they would go fetch you bread. And I'm assuming that that's the type of golem that we're seeing in this instance. It's just that he's got pipes and everything running out of him as well. So I imagine that he's more like a modernized golem. Maybe he isn't actually like a magical clump of clay, but he's actually just like a robot that's got a bunch of clay covered over him, or the clay is sentient and it's controlling the robot bits. Or it could still be a mythical reasoning, and it's just that he's been upgraded with robotic stuff for some reason. Also, we know he's made of clay because he threw a whole ass chair into him and it's stuck. Now, weaknesses for him, he's made of clay, so like just dunk water on him or put him under an ultraviolet light. He'll just harden up immediately. Then we have Prism. I ran out of witty things to say. She seems like a speedster of sorts. Like her power, it comes from a form of light, because as you can see when she moves, she leaves behind a second image, which usually means that they're moving fast. Almost every single form of media depicts someone moving fast with a second image behind them. And I assume she uses light too, because she's consistently giving off light. And also the name Prism, it's a bit on the nose as well, that reflects light and all that. I don't know if her power comes naturally, like she can generate light, or if she needs to absorb light to then disperse it later. So if you were to put her in a dark room when she has already dispersed all of her light, I don't know if she would be able to power up from in there or not, because I don't know if it's a physical thing. I don't know if she has to, like, you know what I mean? And also depending on if her perception is sped up or not, you could probably trip her up pretty easily, because she probably wouldn't be able to see the rope that you put in front of her. Now we're on to Coupe, the edgy one. The name Coupe, if taken in the French term and not the English term, which would mean a two-seater car, is the past term for Coupe, which is to cut or strike something. Which lines up for her weapon of choice, which seems to be these small throwing knife type shards, which you can see in a few cases. Even Prism is using one at one point in the scene that we've already been over 1,000 times before. And she seems like she can have some form of control over shadow. I just don't know if that means she herself can go into the shadow, or if she can use shadows to fight people. But she seems like she's the exact opposite of Prism, which makes me think that they have something going on there. I don't know if they're related. I don't know if they're just good friends or anything beyond that. Also, weird note, she disappears from this gifts lineup. So I'm not sure why. I assume maybe she's unlocked later. Now, since we don't know exactly how her shadow powers work, whether she can hide in them or control them, I think that her weakness is probably always going to be light. You know, you just put her in a room where there's too much light going on, so she wouldn't even be able to hide anywhere. Now we're going to do a little bit of an extra one. They're not in the ex-villain lineup. It's the blonde Blazer, also known as the boss lady who's in all of the trailers. And she shows up so much in the trailers, I wanted to put her in as well. She's displayed flight and superhuman strength from what we can see in the trailer. She carries around a man. I mean, he is kind of a bit of a twink. You know, I still imagine that flying around with him in your arms would require some form of superhuman strength. Her name makes me think that her flight is potentially faster than most people's flight, because, you know, Blaze usually means fast and fire, but she doesn't seem to have anything fire going on about her. Instead of that, I can't quite tell if she has any other powers. I assume she would have one or two. We can't say until we actually see more gameplay or play the game. As for her weaknesses, I don't really know, because I don't know if she's bulletproof, but she is optimistic, to say the least. As in, she has like a whole league of villains under her workplace's roof. Of course, they're ex-villains, but nonetheless. I know she's probably strong, but I don't think she could take on a whole 8-person league of supervillains all at once. So, because of that, it makes me very confused as to why she would hand that whole team of 8 supervillains, all of them who have superpowers, maybe not Punch Up, I can't quite tell yet, to a normal dude who hasn't got powers. Yes, he's experienced, and he probably knows most of their weaknesses, but he's just a normal dude. If you can't tell, I am incredibly hyped for this game. It still doesn't have a set release date, except for this year. Also left a link to the game's Steam page down in the description, so if you've heard something you like throughout this video and you didn't already know about Dispatch, go down there, click on the link, you can check it out, maybe wishlist it if you want. Again, it's not sponsored. If anyone from the ad hoc team is listening, I don't know how you did it. I don't know if you put cameras in my room, but you've managed to narrow down all of my hyperfixations down into one single video game playable experience. Telltale type choose your own adventure game with puzzles and having to know your heroes inside and out, from personality to power type, while still having an emotional, grounded superhero story. You've got way more than my attention.
You gonna eat those twinks?
That's not what they're... You know what? Help yourself.